Boom! There it is. Wow, I love it. Everybody, we are so excited. We are going to get kinky with it today. You ready to have some fun? I'm ready to have some fun. Let's do this.
Practicing Polyamory, real-life perspectives from the imperfect people of polyamory. The mission of the Practicing Polyamory podcast is to provide a platform for all of the real-life, flawed humans that practice polyamory so that we might all learn from one another and grow as a community. Enjoy the show.
I love that song. It doesn't matter how many times it plays. I love it. All right, everybody. Welcome to the show. Before we jump into our content, I just want to talk about 3 really quick things. Number 1, if you are listening, watching, wherever you are, please head over to YouTube. Do a search for Practicing Polyamory Podcast and hit that subscribe button. I'm at 84 subscribers. I just checked right before the show. 84. So if 16 of you that are out there can just head over and give me that subscribe, I can finally get my custom URL and we can just go to youtube.com/practicingpoly. Speaking of which, that's where you can find me everywhere on social media at Practicing Poly. Would love if you would follow me there as well. All right, thing number two, in a week and a half, whatever, on Friday, March 26th, 11 a.m. Pacific. I'm super excited about this. I'm going to have the author of The Polyamorous Next Door, Dr. Eli Sheff, on the show. March 26th, 11 a.m. I'm super excited about that. One of the things that we're going to talk about on the show is the Bonding Project. The Bonding Project is a relationship test that kind of explains the ways that we bond with other people, whether it's one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, etc., and so on, and how comfortable or cautious or curious we are about these different ways of bonding with people. So check out bondingproject.com. Take the bonding type test to get an idea of your bonding style, because we are going to be talking about that again next Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern with Dr. Eli Sheff. I'm super excited. And the last thing, since this came up in an earlier conversation today, whoever you are, wherever you are, if you're actively polyamorous, if you are polyam curious, if you are professional serving the polyamorous community, I want to hear your story. It doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, queer, lesbian, trans, NB, ace, arrow, whatever. I want all of your representation. The more representation we have, the more representation the more stories we hear, the more the world gets to learn about all of us, and the better we can serve our community. All right, that's all I've got as far as all of that goes. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get on with the show. Our guest today is a lifestyle dominant who enjoys discussing, researching, practicing, and writing about love, sex, romance, and kink. Having written numerous books on these subjects, no matter what your experience level is with kink, our guest is sure to have something to offer. By becoming a member of her website, you'll have access to such titles as So What Is Kinky Anyway?, Femdom and Women in Charge, The Big Book of Ass, and Understand Me Now, and that's in order. Our community, our polyamorous community, is definitely sex positive, and I like to think that I am too, generally speaking. But this is our first real foray on the show into kink, and I cannot be more excited to blush often and openly right here on air with all of you. So this is definitely going to be a fun show. Joining us today from datingkinky.com, welcome to the show, Miss Nookie. Welcome, Miss Nookie. How's it going? How are you today?
I am very well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Really appreciate you making the time.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I love talking about this stuff.
I can see that you have so many books. You've got your website. You have been on multiple podcasts. You're an expert in, especially from my point of view, you're an expert in all things kink. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How long has this been going on? How long has this been part of your life? Tell me a little bit about your history and what's gotten you to where you are today.
So, interestingly enough, I grew up in a swinky household. So, I actually grew up with
Swinky.
polyamorous people,
Okay.
and who were kinky.
Mhm.
They never like sat me down and explained all of this to me, really. It's just those are the people I knew growing up. Like I knew people who, dressed in leather, or a woman who had a boyfriend and a girlfriend, or men who dressed up in women's clothing or whatever. Like I knew these people. They were just a part of
Mhm.
life. Um,
It was
and then when
just
I was,
normal.
yeah, I mean, it's the same type of people that I tend to gravitate towards now.
Mhm.
Open-minded, sexually free, accepting of other people and their foibles and their curiosities and so on and so forth. Um, and then when I was 19, I was living in New York City, and a friend said to me, "Hey, one of my friends is a bartender at this like really crazy club. Want to go?" And I'm
Crazy,
like,
huh?
"Sure."
Of course.
So at 19, I put on my little mini skirt with my high leather boots, and I, walk my, hot ass
Mhm, mhm.
into the vault. And it was dark, and the floors were sticky, and there were people in leather and latex and almost nothing. And boys wanted to do things for me.
And did you feel like right at home?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, "Oh, I like this. This is good." So,
Okay.
and that was, like I said, that was when I was 19. For a long time, I thought kink was S&M, stand and model, look the part, right?
Okay.
And let people do things for you. And then a few years down the road, I began realizing that there was a lot of like psychology and mental aspects to it. And that's the part I've pretty much been digging into ever since.
Nice. Well, that interestingly enough, that's the part that gets me the most. Like that's the part that
Mhm.
interests me the most, as well as the psychology of it. Um, you have written so much about it. I mean, let's just start with that. I don't know if it's the first book that you wrote, but it sounds like it's the most basic one. What is kinky anyway? Can you tell me a
Yeah,
little
so
bit about that title?
the idea behind that, it's not the first book I wrote, but the idea behind that book is people say to me, "So how kinky are you?"
Hmm.
And I started asking that question. So what is kinky anyway? How do you define kinky? Right? Like some people define oral sex as kinky. Some people
Right.
think it requires, butt sex. Some people think it requires like hooks and bloods and needles and knives and stuff. I don't know. So what is kinky anyway was kind of written to answer the question of what is kinky as a core philosophy when it comes to like dating. Kinky is my site. So, when you're talking about dating and kink, knowing what those two things are is kind of important, right? Then you
Hmm.
understand what my site is about. So, what is kinky anime was designed to first set a basic standard for kink as far as I see the world. And that is people who generally have an open mind, especially but not necessarily in regards to sexuality, right? So they're more open to different experiences. That's
Hmm.
really what it
Hmm.
comes down to. And
Okay.
then it also answers a lot of questions like what's the difference between BDSM and abuse? How do you tell the difference? How
Mm.
do you get yourself into a kinky relationship? What are boundaries and negotiations when it comes into a relationship related to kink? So it's kind of both a primer of what kink is and can be, and it's something that you can hand to like maybe your parents or your potential partner who's like, "I don't know about this whole kink thing. That sounds kind of weird."
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
maybe go through it with them and talk about, these are the things that I feel really apply, and these are the things that are a little bit different from how I would do things. Um, it's meant to be easy to read, non judgmental, and kind of put things out there in a way that even, as we call them, vanilla people
Hmm.
could
Hmm.
understand.
Yeah, we've got Yoe over here talking about open mind and balance is the way. It's all about learning self. Completely agree with all of those with both of those points. And you actually touched on something that I did want to ask you about. I was, going to see if we were going to get to it, but you mentioned abuse versus like BDSM. And I think things that I've read, things that I've seen, there are times when the line can get a little blurred, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough. Okay, so I don't want to be the expert. I want you to kind of give me a little bit of your your knowledge base, because you, in my opinion, are the expert here. So tell me a little bit about the abuse that does happen, and more than anything, how we can protect ourselves from getting in that kind of a situation.
So interestingly enough, I actually have a writing out today specifically about like abuse, especially narcissistic abuse in relationships. And I have a very long piece that I wrote kind of diving into narcissism and the traits of narcissistic abusers and how to protect yourselves from that. And I'll get
really
into
quickly
that in just a second.
Okay,
Sure.
cool. I was just gonna ask you like where people can find that.
Oh yeah, it's up on my blog, so datingkinky.com, and it's a blog area. But and it's also on my podcast, so podcast.datingkinky.com. More than that, let's start with the basic concept of abuse versus literally any other kind of relationship, right? So in kink, the primary goal of any kink relationship is that it be consensual. And in polyamory, we talk about this a lot as well. What is consent? How do we get people to consent to it? There are some people who talk about consensual non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy. So there's a lot of consent being talked about right now, and that's a good thing.
If it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Ding, exactly. So there's that as a concept is if a relationship is consensual, if the parties are informed, if they have agreed, moving forward, that let's put that in that is a good relationship. An abusive relationship removes the consent. It either manipulates somebody into consent. It doesn't allow for somebody to be informed, so therefore they consent to something without realizing what they're consenting to. People don't stop. So like, in kink, for example, there might be humiliation play in which, one person calls the other person names.
Right.
In kink, a safe word or withdrawal of consent will immediately stop that. In abuse, I might just call you names just because I'm upset with you, and you saying, please don't call me names, isn't going to stop me, right? That's abuse. So the main difference between abuse and BDSM and abuse is that in BDSM, everything ought to be consensual, and in abuse, it doesn't matter how hurtful they get. Consent is not the issue. It's not something pre-negotiated. It's not something agreed upon. It's something that happens from one person to the other without a way for that other person to stop it in its tracks, turn it around, make things happen a different way.
Got it. So it's basically when the consentor, the consenter loses their power to end whatever it is that the other person is doing.
I would say it's not even loses it, because many times in abusive situations, the person who is consenting never even had that power to begin with. It starts in a manipulative pattern. There's lies from the beginning. There's deceit from the beginning. That power is drained away without even really being there. In fact, things are often not negotiated at all. Yes, it can be lost, but generally speaking, I would say that's relatively rare. it's pretty rare that you're going to be like in a kinky situation where you've negotiated, you have this amazing relationship, and then suddenly somebody just chooses not to stop because they don't want to, right? Like that
it's
is
like a pattern that you would
likely.
see from the beginning.
Yeah, maybe you wouldn't see it, especially if you're in the middle of it, right? Because abusers are really good at manipulation and hiding their tactics. But if you're thinking to yourself, well, gosh, this person always makes me feel less than and horrible. And even when I say, hey, you're really hurting me, it doesn't seem to stop or get better over time. It may not be intentional abuse, but that's definitely signs pointing towards some sort of abusive situation, because you're not consenting to being hurt, right? Except by sticking around, which is not consent. And they're hurting you, and they're not responding to your requests for renegotiation.
Got it.
I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
Heck yeah, they can. Absolutely. Absolutely, they can. So one thing that I wanted to get in here, if I can, switch the screens there. One thing that I wanted to mention, like I don't want to make this episode all about abuse in kink and abuse in BDSM, because it's not all that. Like there's so much more. And I mean, it was a question, it was something that you brought up that was like kind of in the back of my mind that I wanted to make sure to ask about. But I don't want that to be like the purveying theme here, because it's not that, right? Like BDSM, kink, it's not abuse. It's, most of the time, and especially in long-lasting BDSM relationships, everything is consensual, and all of the humiliation kinks and pain kinks and all these different things, it's all consensual and not abusive. So I just want to make that perfectly clear, so that anybody listening is not just like, oh wow, I don't want to mess around with that. It's just opening myself up for abuse. Like abuse happens in any relationship. Manipulation happens in any relationship. But I wanted to address it in this community and in this particular subject as well. So switching gears here, and let's talk a little bit about the fun side of things. Let's talk about dating kinky and getting to know people. Like what is the process on datingkinky.com? What is it like for folks dating during a pandemic?
Fine. I'll do it myself.
It's rough. I mean, just like anybody else, right? Like, we're kinky. A lot of us are used to, going out to parties and connecting with other people and being, handsy and touched and hugging and, all of those things. And we can't. And it's been a year now.
Yep. The vaccine is coming.
Yeah, I actually just got my first shot.
Today I lost more than you can know.
Well, a year ago, we all lost more than we could know.
So true. Yeah, I just got my first shot on Friday, so I'm very excited about that. Nice. So what we've been focusing on for the past year with Dating Kinky is primarily helping people, connect with people online. So we actually have socials, like social events where we bring people into our online lounge, and people get to like walk in and they see tables with people sitting at the tables, and they can join different tables and, connect. And we have speed networking type things where you get randomly connected with another kinkster and get to talk for 5 minutes. And, so we've got things that are going on that way. And then we've been doing, like, aside from the books, we've been doing a lot of education. So we have like 14 different educational events every single month right now.
14 events every month?
Yeah, on a variety of topics. So like last night was our newbies night, and we talked about negotiation and how to do that, and play and meeting people. And we have topics on flipping the switch. We have submission. We have communication. We have people of color in kink and their allies. We have an LGBTQ plus salon for, that community. So they're both educational and gathering type of things. So we bring people together to learn more about kink and about relationships with the idea that we're here to connect people, kinky people, poly people, swingy people, LGBTQ plus people, anyone who's not quite vanilla. We're here to connect them. And then the education is hopefully to help them maximize the potential of those connections.
Well, it's certainly more enjoyable than my average day.
Right? Throw some kink in there. We'll just have a good time all day.
Absolutely.
There's definitely a intersectionality between non-monogamy, polyamory, and kink. This is just from your opinion, from your experience. Where does that come from?
Well, like I said, for me, kinkiness is more of an open-mindedness, especially in regards to, physical relationships, the body, sexuality, sensation, that sort of thing. And so I think that there's a lot of overlap there because people are open to experiencing different things with different people. Now, some people are monogamous in kink. Some people are sexually monogamous, but they will experience play, like rope tying or flogging or whatever with other people. And some people are wide open. Some people are, in various configurations of polyamory. We have a group that we're doing some collaborations with that are the swinky folk. So they're
love that
swingers.
word, swinky.
I love it. Swingsters. So they're swingers who, have been exploring kink as well. So I think when it comes down to alternative lifestyles, once you're open to one, you have a tendency to experience and be open to more. And eventually you find, especially over the years, oh, this is fun. I'm going to add it to my toolbox and, hey, a little spanky in the sack, yeah, I'm down for that. And then a couple of years later, you're like, flogging, that's the shit, right? And then a couple of years later, you're like, I really like latex. Latex is cool. And then you're like, oh shit, I'm kinky too. Right?
Oh, wow.
Because people brought things into your life and you're like, sure, I'll try it. And then you're like, I like it. This is cool. Yeah.
Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Nice clip. Yeah, I mean, I guess, on the one hand, I can get behind that. I can agree with that. On the other hand, I'm a little bit afraid of like the societal outlook on things, right? Society is going to play the what do they call it? The sliding slippery slope. That's the slippery slope trope, right? Or the slippery slope argument, where if you allow one thing, then it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And I'm a little bit wary of saying, okay, well, when you're open to one thing, then it kind of opens you up to all these other things, because that kind of plays into that slippery slope thing. And then we got all of these, societal norms, right? And people sometimes don't want to talk about their kink, right? They are closeted about it. There's shame associated with that. What is your thoughts on that area, like the whole shame and closeted and people that maybe can't or won't talk about it openly?
Well, I think that that's valid. First of all, because like, for example, I live in North Carolina, which is, at will state when it comes to work, which means I could be fired for no reason at all, or literally anything. So, and kink is not a protective class any more than polyamorous is.
Right.
So there is absolute validity in wanting to, keep what you're into on the DL.
Mhm.
But when I talk about if you're open to one thing, you tend to be open to other things. I mean that from a perspective of, yeah, it's a slippery slope, but that implies to many people a negative connotation. And yeah, there can be a negative connotation, like, sliding down the pathway into hell. But, there's also the slip and slide or the water slides at the amusement park where, you're going
Those are
down and
fun.
you are laughing and screaming and having a wonderful time. And then you land in a pool with all of your friends just partying the summer day away. And really, when it comes right down to it, and this is true, I think this is important for non-monogamy, it's important for kink, and it's important, this is the part I was going to talk about when it comes to avoiding abuse. If all of us as humans learn to set our own boundaries and speak up for them and maintain them, then we will never go further than we feel comfortable or feel willing to take the risk for. And that's the key. So, like, some people will say, well, if we let the gays marry, then they'll be marrying horses next. No, right? Because that isn't what gay people want. They want to marry each other. They don't want to marry horses. It's the same thing with, polyamorists trying kink. They might, some of them might want to do some spanking. They might want to do some power exchange. Most of them are not going to want to put hooks through their flesh and hang through the ceiling. That's okay, right? Your slippery slope is going to end. You saw my face. I was like, "Ooh, yeah, no,
thanks."
Your slippery slope is going to end where your boundaries are. It's that simple. I don't want to put hooks through my flesh and hang from the ceiling, and I've been a kinkster for years. The people who are going to want to do that are the people who are going to want to do that. It's that simple.
Got it. All right. And that kind of leads into one of the things that we talked about right before the show, which is that there's not just one way to kink. There's not just one way to poly. There's not just one way. And that seems to be like the purveying theme. Did I use that word right? Throughout, all of what we do. It's all about consent. It's all about negotiation. It's all about deciding what works for each individual person. Right. And I want to kind of give you this platform here to talk about the things that work for you, those words that you said to me right before the show, if you want to talk about that.
Sure. So it's one of my soapboxes in kink and everything is that I am very anti one true way. And that is the idea that there is one right way for everybody.
Is that a reference to Princess Bride?
Ish. Yeah, I mean,
Ish?
absolutely. Okay. Wove, twoo wove. It's just funny to say it that way because it pokes fun at I am the Grand High Uber Master Domly Dom polyamory dude who will,
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Exactly.
that.
That.
So I'm very anti, there is one prescriptive way for everyone to do the thing. And so in polyamory, we get a lot of people who they go off and this is not to make light of them, but we've got those people who are going to go off and they're going to read, the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto, and they come back and they're like, relationship anarchy for all, right? And that's great for them if it works for them and their partners. But people have been swinging for hundreds of years, and they have rules and they have agreements between, the partnership, and they have hierarchy, and that works for them and it works in their culture, right? So this is really important to keep in mind. So as we were talking about before the show, I am, in addition to being kinky, I am a cuckoldress, pimptress, who is polyamorous and monoromantic. So what that means to everybody, for those who are like, what the fuck is that word salad?
I love
So
it.
as a cuckoldress, what this means is that I have my relationship, my polyamorous relationship is imbalanced. I have sexual freedom, my partner does not. So I get to control my partner's sexuality and engagement with others.
Oh.
And this is done consensually with others. They get to consent to our relationship and what it is. And so that's how we do our things. He asked me to do this. This is what he enjoys. It's what I enjoy. We are both incredibly happy. We do it as ethically as possible. And then I'm a pimptress in the sense that I search out ways to make him of use to people as well. So I look for people to loan him to. Again, this is all consensual, right? They're like, oh yeah, hell yeah, give me that. And he's like, I'm all yours.
All right,
Loan me out all you want, right? So I get to control him and I get to do whatever the fuck I want. This is our negotiation. This is our agreement, and it makes us deliriously happy together. Then I'm polyamorous in the sense that I have many deep and loving relationships, and will become family. And I have sometimes sexy times with them. I have date nights with them, and so on and so forth. They are my people. They're my tribe. I have 2 men and 2 women in my tribe. We're a tribe of 5 right now. And we started about 7.5 years ago. And the newest one has been with us for like 3.5 years. So like it's a pretty serious long-term tribe. Yeah. And we don't have sex all the time or anything like that. Most of the time people wouldn't be able to tell that we're anything but best friends, but we're incredibly close and tight knit. We've traveled around the world together, whatever. So I'm very polyamorous. I believe in this. I tell them that I love them all the time. I am, however, thus far in my life, and it took me a long time to admit this to myself because it seems antithesis to polyamory. I'm a monoromantic. That Twitter-pated feeling, that like NRE, super in love, like silly
Butterflies.
writing things on the mirror type thing. I only experience that with one person at a time. And if I have a person that is my romantic center, all of my other people, they still get my love. They still get passion. They still get, date nights and fun together. I don't do the silly, goofy, romantic stuff with them. It doesn't even occur to me. And
that's cool, baby. I mean, you know how it is.
Playing it like Danny Zuko.
yeah. Like this is something I tell people, so people come into my life and they're like, I would love to be a partner of yours. And I'm like, great, just understand, I'm not going to fall in love with you. Or at least if history, has any indication, I'm not going to fall in love with you, although I may love you for a very long time and you may become important to me and never leave my life. You're just not going to get that like primary partner, goofy feeling from me. Once it's settled, it's just not there for anyone else. And
yeah. I mean, there are one of the things that I mentioned, when we started the show in that monologue is right? Aromantic. So there are people who are polyamorous but don't get that romantic feeling at all. They have the love, they have the depth, they have the care and all of that, but the romance, the writing their name, carving names into trees and doing all these silly things, they're never gonna feel that. And that's like you're saying.
Fine by me.
I hope so. And that's just kind of, how some people operate. And as long as everybody's aware and it's consensual, there you go. All right, Miss Nookie.
I like to say, just real quick, I like to say that that's how it's been for me thus far. Maybe moving forward in my life, that might change, but,
so far, that's what it's been.
That's what it's been. Yeah.
All right. Well, the last thing here before we head off, since we are almost done here, tell the people all about datingkinky.com. If they want to get in touch with you, if they want to sign up, I mean, what should they do? What is the action item that people should do?
Well, head on over to datingkinky.com. It's built by kinksters for kinksters, poly, queer, trans folk, and anyone not quite vanilla. And it's free. And then if you happen to be both polyamorous and kinky, you can find me on FetLife as Nookie Notes, on Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Facebook, and Medium as Dating Kinky. And we're on Instagram as Dating Kinky Official, all one word.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Miss Nookie Notes. It's really been a pleasure. I didn't quite blush as much as I wanted to, so we're gonna have to try that again and see if we can turn my face red next time.
Maybe next time we should talk about the Big Book of Ass.
That'll do it. That will do it. I guarantee it. just reading the subtitle. It's everything you want to know about anal play, and I'm like,
oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, you can almost see me getting red already. So that'll be great. If you want to come back, calendar's booked out until August. But let's do it and let's talk about it and let's talk about dating kinky and all this good stuff. Oh man, I can't even. Woo, that'll be fun. Well, thank you again for joining us. And thank you, as always, to our live audience as well. Just a quick reminder that when we're live, you don't get any commercial interruptions, but the same cannot be said for the podcast download. So if you want to avoid those commercial interruptions, be sure to catch us live Monday through Wednesday at 2:30 Pacific time, or sign up for our Patreon where you'll get access to our commercial-free RSS feed and support the show. Don't forget to head over to www.bondingproject.com between now and March 26th so that you'll know what Dr. Eli Chef and I are talking about. And subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Follow me on all social medias at Practicing Poly. Thank you again, Miss Nookie, for joining us, and thank you all for joining us today. Don't forget to, as always,
Have a nice day!
Thank you for tuning in to the Practicing Polyamory podcast. Would you or someone in your polycule like to be a guest? Sign up at practicingpolyamory.com and join the conversation. Please support us by subscribing, liking, and following us on social media at Practicing Polya by clicking any of the affiliate links on our website or by subscribing at patreon.com/